Chapter 2, Segment 4. The brain has an elaborate vascular system. The brain is a very demanding organ. Although it's only 2% of the weight of the average human body, it takes up more than 20% of the body's energy at rest. If the brain doesn't get the oxygen and nutrients supplied by blood, it dies. To ensure this doesn't happen, there are many sets of large blood vessels. Carotid arteries are major arteries that supply blood to the anterior and middle cerebral arteries, which supply blood to about 2/3 of the cerebral hemisphere. The other part of the cortex is supplied by the posterior cerebral arteries, which get their blood from the vertebral arteries. Vertebral arteries fuse together to form the basilar artery, which supplies blood to the hindbrain. The joining of the carotid and the basilar arteries form a structure called the circle of Willis, which provides another way for blood to flow if the main arteries get damaged or blocked. A stroke occurs when there is a disruption in blood supply, which causes the region to stop working or die. The effects of the stroke depend on the region affected, though some include dizziness, severe headache, and weakness. If a victim is treated immediately, there are treatments to restore blood flow and minimize the long-term effects. There is a blood-brain barrier that helps protect the brain from some substances found in blood. Brain imaging techniques reveal the structure and function of the living human brain. Researchers want to see how structures in the brain act during certain behaviors. Angiography is a technique in which an injection of radioplaque allows the blood vessels to be seen better in X-rays. Measurement of density can be used to map the structure of the brain. Computerized axial tomography, CAT or CT, is a technique used to examine brain structures by measuring the X-ray absorption at many parts of the brain and generating a computer analysis. Imaging MRI is a technique that uses magnetic energy images of structural details. They have a higher resolution than CT. Diffusion tensor imaging uses MRI technology to study white matter by producing images using the diffusion of water. DTI tractography helps visualize the orientation of white matter using DTI. Functional imaging techniques map regional brain activity during behaviors. Positron emission tomography PET scans want to get pictures of the brain activity instead of structures. The technique injects radioactive chemicals into the bloodstream, and radiation detectors mark where the chemicals are. Functional MRI uses MRI technology to detect changes in blood flow, which helps identify regions of the brain activated during certain tasks. Optical imaging uses near-infrared light and passes it through the scalp and skin. Transcranial magnetic stimulation uses strong magnetic currents to stimulate the cortex, which allows certain areas of the cortex to be activated. Magnetoencephalography maps small magnetic fields of neurons to see what areas are active during tasks. Sophisticated imaging techniques are powerful tools requiring cautious interpretation. These techniques allow researchers to study brain lesions. They also provide new information that would otherwise be unknown. Though these techniques have aided many advances, there are still trade-offs. For example, functional MRI has high-resolution images, but is slow, so it doesn't track brain activity as well. It is important to note that these images are not perfect, but give a pretty close representation. The cutting-edge two heads are better than one. Conventional functional imaging technology does a good job showing brain activity during behavior, but doesn't portray behavior naturally. Social neuroscience wants to understand brain activity when interacting with others. Dyadic functional MRI uses an MRI scanner that allows two individuals to act with one another and measure their brain activity, which gives a better understanding of brain activity when interacting with others.